And thanks again for coming to Drupal Camp Montreal. It's always a pleasure to be here and see so many people from the community. Today I'm going to be talking about the Drupal experience. I put together this keynote just in the last week, just based on some kind of reflections about my recent experience doing a lot of training in the Drupal community. Thank you so much to the Montreal Drupal Association for having me. My name is Suzanne Dergacheva. I co-founded Evolving Web with Alex back 10 years ago, so you just heard the whole story. And one of the things that I've been doing, I guess, in the last 5 of those years is running a Drupal training program. And so that's a huge part of what I do at Evolving Web. But I won't talk too much more about us because I think you already got the intro. What I'm here to talk about today is, like I said, the Drupal experience. And my motivation for talking about this, because we all love the word experience these days, like user experience. We hear about experiences all the time. Dries has been talking recently about experiences too. And our motivation for talking about this today is maybe the concern that some people feel about where Drupal's going, right? We feel it in the air. We go and we talk to people about Drupal, and they're like, oh yeah, but Drupal 8 is so hard to learn, and you go and you look on Drupal.org and you see how many people are actually using Drupal 8, and you see, oh, it's not as many as I thought. Maybe there's some concern in the community about adoption. Do I see heads nodding? People kind of know what I mean. Yeah, we hear about market share of Drupal and different types of projects that Drupal's used for, and maybe now smaller projects. Drupal isn't the best fit, and there's a lot of kind of anxiety around that. And so I wanted to talk today about how we, as members of the Drupal community, people who love Drupal, can kind of take this challenge and think through it. Because sometimes in the Drupal community, we all love Drupal. We're all on board. We're all like, yeah, Drupal, it's great. It's open source. Like, what's the problem? And we're not always, we're not always salespeople as Drupal developers, right? We're not necessarily the best people at doing marketing. But what I think we can think about, just whatever your role is in Drupal, whether you're a developer, whether you run a Drupal shop, whether you're a designer or a site builder or just a content editor, what I think we can do is we can think about the whole experience of using Drupal, and I want to address this through a method called design thinking. So how many of you have heard of design thinking before? Yeah, it's sort of this new thing. You might, well, I don't know how new it is, but it seems new to me. It's something that we talk about a lot. We host user experience meetups at Evolving Web, and so we get a lot of user experience people hanging out with us, and they're always talking about design thinking and how we can solve problems, not just with classic design, thinking about design as a visual thing, but actually designing that whole experience and designing how people actually walk through a process or use a product, or thinking about design as a bigger thing. And so the steps in design thinking, rather than just jumping into designing something, we start by thinking through who the users are. So in terms of the Drupal community, right, we're talking about who are people who actually interact with Drupal. And this is where we can get outside of our box and actually start thinking about empathizing with other Drupal users, other types of Drupal users. So I'm gonna walk through this process today. I'm gonna start with this empathize phase. So what is the Drupal experience, and it's kind of a hard question to answer because we are all Drupal users. We all have an experience with Drupal. Maybe you learned Drupal when you started working at a company. Maybe you taught yourself. you're here at this Drupal camp, so you have some implication in the Drupal community, but there are so many other types of Drupal users. There's so many answers to this question, what is the Drupal experience? Our community is really, really diverse, and it's diverse because it's a global community. There's people using Drupal, not just in Montreal, of course, or in North America, but really all around the world. And then within that large set of people using Drupal, we have all these different types of people. So you can start thinking, when we talk about user experience, we're often talking about personas, right? So maybe, just even in your web design or development practice, you do this. You think through a website, and you think, what are the different personas? So I can start thinking of different personas in Drupal, and it goes way beyond just developers, right? We have designers using Drupal, we have people who are one-person IT teams who do everything, and Drupal's just one of those things. We have people contributing to Drupal, salespeople actually selling it, front-end developers, back-end developers, sysadmins who are doing deployments. So all kinds of different categories of users that we can think through. And so, we can think through, okay, what are the different personas? How do people interact with Drupal? We can maybe learn something from this. But I think personas are just a starting point. Personas are kind of generalizations. Like when I'm doing a training, I train teams of Drupal often for a week at a time. So we go and do introductions, and people will introduce themselves and say, "Oh, I'm a developer," or I'm a front-end developer, and they'll sort of give themselves a label. But then as I meet them and I kind of get to know them over the week, it turns out that that's just the start of it. Like every person who's interacting with Drupal is actually on a journey. They're on a user journey to learn Drupal, or to get something done, or to figure out whether it's a good fit for their project. And so everybody who you're going to interact with in Drupal is actually going somewhere. They're not just using Drupal. They're actually trying to get something done. And so through these trainings, I've kind of come to this realization that there's not just a lot of personas using Drupal. As I go and meet these groups of people who I'll train for a week at a time, I really see a huge diversity as I kind of zoom in on an individual and see, okay, where is this person actually going? They're maybe a front-end developer today, but maybe they're actually going to end up managing a whole series of Drupal websites. Maybe they're trying to learn Git. Maybe they're a marketing person, but they're actually trying to become more technical. So maybe the label that they give themselves isn't actually reflective of where they're going. They're on this user journey, and they're just trying to get to the next, kind of get to the next level. So all these groups of people I meet, I started to think about what journey they're on in Drupal. And so I want you to think, maybe to start with, because this is the journey that you know the best is your own experience. Think back to when you first started using Drupal. Like, what was your first taste of it? Where did that journey start? So for some people, it's the so you close your eyes because the lights are set off. Think back, maybe you see like a Drupal install screen. I think I'm seeing like the Drupal 6 or Drupal 5 install. Maybe I didn't even get that far, first downloading Drupal. Or maybe you inherited a website and you view source and you see, oh, it's using Drupal. I guess I have to learn about this Drupal thing. Or maybe it was a Drupal event like this, or you went to Drupal.org. Drupal.org now, it actually has got these great kind of persona calls to action on it. Probably when you first went to Drupal.org, it didn't look like that. So you think back to your own first experience with Drupal and put yourselves into those shoes. And so some example user journeys that maybe are not our experience, but that are kind of key user journeys that happen every day, all the time. Selecting a content management system, inheriting a Drupal project, building your first site or doing an upgrade. So you're thinking through how the people that you interact with Drupal are actually experiencing Drupal. You're telling them Drupal's this great thing, but like, what is their actual experience? So I want to walk through a few actual user journeys. So this is Carolina. She was one of my students in a class recently. She did some course in web design when she was in college. And so she kind of had this as a background. And then one day she heard about Drupal. I guess there was a Drupal camp going on in her area down in New Jersey, and she's like, oh, I'm going to go to Drupal camp. And then she ended up deciding to build a nonprofit website in Drupal. And she has a science background, so she actually studies science, so she's done a lot of data visualization, so she's pretty technical, even though she considers herself a beginner Drupaler, but she's got this technical background. And so now she has a job where she can use Drupal for this nonprofit website, and so that's what she's trying to do right now. She's trying to learn Drupal so she can get this whole site online. And so when I think through her user journey, there's a lot of high points. Like, she went to this Drupal camp, she got really excited, she's like, yeah, Drupal, like, just a couple months later, she was already trying to build her first site. But then she's also got this kind of pain point. Like, now at this point, she's trying to get her site all together, and she's thinking through, like, how am I actually going to get my site online? And for her, she's really brand new to Drupal, so it's a big challenge for her. She doesn't know the community necessarily, and she just doesn't know, like, what the best practice is. So that's her kind of gap in her knowledge. Like, she's able to figure out so much, and she's got all this enthusiasm behind her, but then she's just like, how do I put my website online? So that's her user journey. That's where she's at. So another user journey. So Sam studied design in school. He ended up working in a communications department at a university. So there's tons of Drupalers out there, right, who are working at universities. Some of them are in the crowd here. And now he works on this web team, and he's doing some administration, and he's doing updates for some Drupal 7 sites. And then one day, the team decides to go and hire a company to build them a Drupal 8 website. And he's all excited, like, Drupal 8, I've heard all about this. But then he gets the site back, and he doesn't know what development workflow to use to actually get his site, like, keep it up to date, keep the configuration management workflow going correctly. And so he has this big knowledge gap, and it's like he thinks he's on this Drupal path, but then he's got this gap in knowledge that he encounters. So another user. So Gina's actually a developer. She's, considers herself an IT professional. She's been in the industry for a while, and she runs, I think, a SharePoint website currently. And then her boss told her that they were going to start using Drupal. So she's the developer on the team. She's supposed to figure this stuff out. She goes and does her research. She learns about Drupal. She gets it up and running, and she's really, like, quick. Like, she's used to being able to do things really fast because she has all this experience. And she's supposed to build the company intranet in Drupal. And so no problem with the setup. She feels technically really savvy, but just in terms of doing things the Drupal way, she has a lot of anxiety about that because she sees all these different techniques. She goes into blog posts and everybody's telling her to do things a different way. So just figuring out, like, what the difference between, does she make a block, does she make a view, does she make a content type, this is all confusing to her, and it's just because she's trying to get things done quickly, and she doesn't know what to Google for when she's trying to figure things out. And then last user here we have Chris, who is someone who maybe we don't think about enough in the Drupal community. He's got a marketing background, so he's actually like a marketing professional. That's his main job. And so he understands the content of his organization. He's working for, I think, an NGO. And so he's got this marketing background. He's trying to evaluate Drupal because he heard about it in a list of, like, content management systems that they're considering. And so he went to a Drupal event. Maybe he's here right now. Maybe Chris is among us. And he's trying to compare Drupal to other content management systems, and he was able to, at the Drupal event, actually install Drupal. Like, he got someone to show him a tool, he's able to set up a demo site, and he's really excited, like it was easier than he thought. And so he's got the install ready, so you can think back to the, you've got the install screen, you're excited, then you get to your welcome page of Drupal, and you're like, what do I do next? I have no idea how to actually evaluate this, because he's looking at other things, maybe like WordPress or other content management systems that he's heard of, and it seems really, really like not a whole website, and he just doesn't know how to tell if it's good or not, because he's not looking at the whole potential of Drupal, he's just looking at the screen in front of him. So we can start to empathize with our users, and I really get into these stories because I just showing some faces on a screen, you have some connection, but actually going and talking to people, you get a lot more. And then at some point, you kind of want to figure out, well, how can we actually start to solve some of these problems? Because you hear about these pain points. Maybe some of them are really easy to solve. Maybe it's just like, oh, we can just go and fix this in the Drupal UI. Like, oh, there's this thing that's hard to use. But maybe some things are really much harder to solve in terms of those pain points. They're more process-based. They're harder to even define. So in terms of design thinking, once we've started to empathize with users, we can start to define what problems they're actually facing so that we can move towards solving some of those problems. And so when I go back through these user stories, I'm looking for two kinds of feedback from these kinds of people. I'm looking for highlights, because I like to be positive, things that they really like, things that are good moments for them, and then also these pain points, these tricky gaps that are the reasons that maybe they're going to be frustrated. And we actually do these at our user experience meetups. We go through different projects, different examples, and we always run through some really positive feedback, and then we do some negative feedback. So that's why I'm going to start with these typical highlights, because I think when I see user journeys in Drupal, I'm always inspired by the good experiences that people have. So I love training people because of these moments. Like, I wouldn't do it if it was just the pain points. So often for people, going to a DrupalCon or a Drupal camp is like a huge highlight for them. Like actually meeting other people who do Drupal, getting inspired, meeting contributors. That's always an awesome moment. Then we have these aha moments in the training. It's like the first time somebody figures out how a view works, or the first time somebody's like, oh, I can just go and create this content type and it's going to work for my site. So the first time somebody really sees the power of Drupal, that's always a great highlight. And then when people start to figure out how they can solve their problems, it's often once they've sort of gotten the terminology down and they're like, oh, I can just go and ask for help on Slack and there's people who will help me. Or I can go and find this issue on Stack Overflow or on Drupal.org. Like when people first get help from the community, that's often a really inspiring moment for them, because they realize that there's a real community of people who actually care about their problem. And then on the flip side of that, when you first help someone with their problem, that's always huge. So I love it in my trainings when the person who just learned Drupal 2 days ago, they just installed it for the first time and they're helping somebody next to them solve their problem. That's always a hugely empowering thing. Launching your site is obviously a huge moment. Sometimes the day after launch is less of the highlight, but usually the first launch is like, yeah, we launched something in Drupal. Or even just getting your site, up on a server somewhere. For a lot of people, that's huge. Just being able to take something that they built on their laptop and see it up on a URL that someone else can access, that's often like a breakthrough. And then also contributing for the first time. For anyone who's ever gone to a contribution sprint at DrupalCon, or even at a local camp where people are contributing and they realize that they can be active in the community, that's always a great highlight. Okay, so we all have warm, fuzzy feelings, I hope. We're all like, yeah, Drupal, we're awesome. So then we think through, okay, like what are actually these gaps that we were talking about a minute ago? When we start to ask for how people are having issues with Drupal, what are the main issues? I think that there's a lot of things I could list here. I think I narrowed this down a bit, but some of the things that I see that are kind of hard problems to actually solve, terminology overload is a huge one. Even just words that we use all the time, like site builder, don't mean things often to people when they're coming into the community and we say, oh, are you a site builder? And they're like, what's a site builder? Don't we all, we're all building websites? What does this mean? Development environments and workflow. So, of course, there are more tools than ever to help us set up development environments and to help us get our sites into production and to help us run multiple Drupal sites or just one Drupal site. And there's more tools than ever, but this is still a huge gap for people. So guiding people towards the right tools to use, this is a huge place where there's a need to fill that gap. And then just deployment, which is of course part of the same thing. Security updates, and of course upgrades. Upgrading from one version of Drupal to the other. This is a huge place where people lose momentum, they get confused, they're not sure, they hear about security, and they're like, oh, I know there's something I'm supposed to do, but what is this? And then figuring out the Drupal way, and this is always seems vague, like people realize that there's 10 ways to do something on the same thing on their Drupal site, and they really don't know which way, and just the choice of having so many options often makes people really anxious. Oh, it's actually cool. I've never used an animated GIF before in a slide. I was like, it's a Keynote, you're supposed to put funny stuff like that. There you go. That's the one you get. Okay, so these user experience gaps, these pain points, I mean, to us, maybe they seem trivial. Like, oh, well, if somebody has problems with security updates, or if somebody has problems with terminology, I can just show them how to do that. Like, that's something that I understand. We can solve these problems. But I think the real problem is not so much these pain points, but it's the anxiety around them. So it's somebody who's not necessarily the most, maybe they've come to a Drupal event, but maybe they haven't talked to other people about these experiences, and they're just anxious that they don't understand something that they should understand. And so I think this is really a hard thing to get over. People have an imposter kind of syndrome sometimes, or people don't know who to ask for help, or people just assume like, oh, I'm finding this difficult, but it should be easy. And so it's this anxiety that I think makes people maybe not use Drupal, or maybe spread ideas about Drupal, like the fact that maybe Drupal's insecure, or like maybe Drupal's really hard, and maybe I can't learn Drupal because I'm not a developer. And these ideas that people get, I think, come from this anxiety. And so if we walk through the pain points that people have, I think we can sense this anxiety, and this is really what we want to really want to define and really want to figure out. If it's just a matter of fixing some UI text to make Drupal easier to use, that's maybe easy to solve. But some of these issues are just more around people not knowing where to turn in their process of learning Drupal. So we can walk through these pain points and really identify where the anxiety is coming from. So each of these users, we can imagine maybe how we would help them, or how we could help address these problems, or even just how we could reach out to users like this. Maybe the information's already there. Maybe we can already help Chris with what to do when he's first installed Drupal and what to do next. But we need to reach out to Chris. We need to actually talk to him, and not just Drupal developers in general. So I think there's a huge need to identify with these people, empathize with them, figure out their problems, and actually speak to them about it. So we can help each one of them. And that's kind of the next part of this. So we've empathized with all these different users. We've thought about users who aren't like us, who use Drupal in different ways. Not just the examples here, but all kinds of people we're going to interact with in the Drupal community. We've thought about their issues and we've asked them. I think that's really the key. It's not just to assume, but to ask people, like, to define the pain points that they have and listen to them. And now the next phase of design thinking is called ideate. And this is like where you say, okay, well, what solution could we propose to these problems? And this is, of course, a hard part. It's not just thinking about the problem or interviewing people, but it's actually generating ideas. And so you might be thinking, well, Suzanne, isn't there already a solution to that? You know, isn't there already, I've heard these things, there's things going on in the Drupal community to promote Drupal, to make Drupal easier to use. Like, I think someone else is taking care of this, right? So let's talk about that for a second. So there are lots of things going on. It's really exciting, actually. There's been a huge, I think, response in the Drupal community to these types of challenges that people face. And so there's all kinds of initiatives that have arisen recently to address some of these anxieties. And one of them, who here has heard of the Out-of-the-Box initiative? Yeah, so Out-of-the-Box initiative, for those who, because most of you didn't raise your hands, is a new install profile that's been created, and it's actually already part of the next release of Drupal. And so you'll see it there when you go and install Drupal. And some of you were in my class yesterday and you installed Drupal for the first time and you were all asking, what is this standard install you speak of? And you know, there was standard, there was minimalist, and now there's going to be this new one, Umami, which actually will show people what you can build with Drupal. So you can start off building a site, or you can say, I just want to see what Drupal does. And you can go install a Drupal that actually is a site that looks great and has recipes, has all this content. You can edit it. It's got a lot of features already, so you can kind of see what the potential of Drupal is. And so that's an initiative that's I think wrapping up. That's already going to be there out of the box. So that's one thing on our list here. The Admin UI initiative. Who's here? Who's heard of this? The initiative to, maybe you heard like, oh, React is going to get into Drupal. Who has heard of this rumor? Yeah, we're going to have this awesome administrative interface, eventually, potentially React-based, and it's very exciting. And in the meantime, there's lots of work being done actually to just improve the admin UI as is. So there's work being done just to make it easier for people to use tools like uploading images, just to make the UI a bit more modern, because 7 has been around, right, we know, since Drupal 7. So there's lots of work being done there, and that's really exciting. There's also an issue that's being worked on to make core updates possible through the admin UI. So for those people who have all this anxiety about security, really want to make sure their site's up to date, and there's a presentation later today on Drupal get-in, so all of that anxiety there, there is an issue being worked on to address that, or to help address that for certain types of users. And then there are also plans, and not just plans, but actually this is the new way of the new release cycle for Drupal is facilitating making upgrades easier in the future. So you know how upgrading from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 is this huge project. So the plan is going forward that this will be much easier, that we'll have these minor upgrades to introduce features, and so this process will really make it easier for people to upgrade. So that fundamentally solves a huge anxiety for people, or starts to solve it, that when they're installing Drupal 8, one day you'll have to upgrade to Drupal 9, and that's very intimidating and anxiety-inducing when you know how much work it's going to be. So there's all these things going on, and there's also, for those of you who are like, I didn't know about these initiatives, like how can I find out more? I want to know what's going on. Suzanne, how can I get in the loop? So there's a new set of landing pages that's being developed on Drupal.org to actually explain what all these initiatives are, and to give you links if you want to help out, or just see what the status is, or just know more about it. And so you can go look that up on Drupal.org. That's brand new though, so you're going to have to maybe search for it a little bit, or you can use my link here in the slides. Okay, so these are all things that are going on which can encourage us that yes, these pain points are being addressed and the Drupal community is really caring about these issues. But then you might say, like, what can I do? Did I hear anyone say that? What can I do? I heard somebody, yes, what can I do? So Drupal's open source, right? So we can sit here saying, oh, there's all these pain points, people have a hard time using Drupal, ho-hum. But we actually are part of an open source community where we can change things, and that's amazing. So we are both like actors in this Drupal experience. We have Drupal experiences, but we can also go and affect the experience of others. And this can happen not just at the level of the software, like going and making Drupal easier to use, solving these pain points in that way, but also at a community level. So just by participating here in the Drupal camp, like you're already helping other people. Actually, you're already being part of this community of people that welcomes new Drupalers and helps them get over these pain points. And not just new Drupalers, but Drupalers who are trying to get to the next level. And so there's some things that maybe we can do. So first of all, I think being honest about the pain points in Drupal is huge. Actually empathizing with people means saying, oh yeah, when I first did an upgrade, I found this hard. Or when I first used Git, like, it didn't make sense to me. Or when I first tried to figure out how to deploy a Drupal site, like, this was hard. This is something I had to figure out. And so I think just by saying that we all have pain points, we're gonna really help people feel less anxious about theirs. And so this is something we can do today, something you can do in your conversations today to empathize with others. Community participation. So like I said, you're all here, you're giving all the newcomers and all the other new Drupal people you're meeting, those who haven't met before, a warm welcome, but also taking the opportunity maybe to mentor people and support them. Maybe they're your colleagues or people you meet through the community. That's huge. Staying involved in the local community. So I think Omar might have mentioned this, that we need more involvement in the local community. So that's a way to invite a more community-oriented approach and just help the community grow and stay active and help that warm welcome continue, not just at Drupal Camp, but throughout the year. And then also beyond just Montreal, right, beyond just going to this Drupal Camp and meeting Drupalers in person, there's lots of ways to get involved and do this online. So through Slack or through Drupal.org or however it is, you interact or have the opportunity to interact with other Drupal people having other Drupal experiences all the time. So let's keep doing this and let's do it even better. Okay, now for a couple things that are maybe more like call to action, do this today. So I'm involved in a little project to help improve the user experience of Drupal, and we're doing a UX study for content editors. We're starting with content editors because it's a place where there's a lot of need for improvement, and then also going to extend that probably to site builders at some point too. So if you are a content editor, if you do content editing in Drupal, that's probably a bunch of you here, then you can fill in this survey. So I have a link to the survey. I don't really expect you all to click on this, especially since it's up in my slide. But you can come to my booth today, Evolving Web. We're going to be helping people fill in this survey, so you can really help us by telling us your experience if you're a content editor. If you're not a content editor, but let's say you know some content editors, please come talk to me, because maybe you can help us spread the word about the survey, get more people involved, and so if you're working for an organization where there are many content editors you work with, or even just a couple, please let me know, and I'm going to give you the link to send to those people if they're willing to help out. And then last thing, a lot of you might have heard of the Promote Drupal campaign. How many of you have heard of this? Yeah, you might have heard of it from the Dries-Note at DrupalCon, or just links on Twitter. So this is a campaign that the Drupal Association is working on to actively try and promote Drupal to more of these users, more of these personas who we don't always talk to in the Drupal community. So, marketing people, etc. People making decisions about what CMS to use. And so if you want to get involved in that, if you are good at writing, or if you have ideas to how we can spread Drupal, or you want to go to conferences and talk to non-Drupal conferences and talk to people about Drupal, there's an opportunity to get involved. So you can find out about that on Drupal.org, of course, on the Promote Drupal page. And there are also, of course, accepting donations as an actual fund. In addition to just volunteering your time, you could also just donate to it. And so these are all ideas that we can actually start working on now. We can start trying them out. And the good thing about design thinking is that it works really well with the whole Drupal mindset, the whole fact that we have an open source community, an open source platform. We have the opportunity to test and prototype things. There's lots of ways we can do this. Today I was focusing really on the empathy part, but once we get some ideas going, I think that the Drupal community is good at running with things. So go take your ideas for how to make the community more welcoming, how to make people's journeys better, how to help people with those anxieties and getting over those pain points. And try things out, do testing, and see what happens, see how this affects the community. Let's come back here in a year and see if attitudes have changed. And I'm always inspired, actually, by people who I meet who are on all different stages of their user journey. So I invite you to be inspired too, especially over the next 2 days as we get to learn more things about Drupal and beyond Drupal at this Drupal camp. Always an amazing opportunity here at Drupal Camp Montreal. Okay, last little thing. I love doing trainings, so I'm just going to put this slide up for like 5 seconds saying I'm doing some training online in Toronto. If you guys like training here in Montreal, please let me know. I would love to do training actually in my hometown, en français ou en anglais. So come talk to me if that's of interest. And thank you so much for your time today, and have a good Drupal.
Any questions or anything?
I don't know if anyone has questions.
You do have time for questions.
I would love questions, but it's so dark. Everyone's like hiding in the dark. Comments? I think this is more of a comment kind of, like question kind of,
It was great.
Yes.
Est-ce que le questionnaire va être disponible en français?
Est-ce que c'est disponible en français? Oui, je peux le redonner tout en français dans le couloir, ou je peux faire une vidéo après la même chose en français. C'est une grande défi pour moi, mais je vais essayer.
Du questionnaire pour les éditeurs de contenu, est-ce que ce sondage-là va être en français?
Ah oui, ça c'est une bonne question. Je peux l'arranger, peut-être pas pour aujourd'hui parce que c'est pas moi qui gère le sondage, mais je vais l'arranger. Je peux vous donner le lien après. Merci pour la question, c'est une très bonne idée. Thank you guys so much. Go to your next section.
1 second.
Wait, we're doing a photo, yeah?
We need 2 things. Does anyone have any last minute changes to the program they'd like to announce to whoever's here?